Alright, so this is going to be a literal cry for help to all the Linux developers. I have no idea what to do now. I have no idea how to get this thing up and running. I need your help. I'm gonna put away, I don't know, $100. I know that this ain't worth shit nowadays by these standards, but hey, if you can help me figure this out, that's $100 in it for you. Here's the rub. I got myself a little Libre computer that runs their own. They have their own distribution of Debian. This is the Debian base, or basically their desktop-less, headless system distribution of Debian. Technically, it is connected. As you can see, it is connected to an HDMI display, so it's running in what I assume is command line interface, CLI. And I have put together a little Python SDL application that is supposed to be, well, it's supposed to literally just take in the keyboard events and output them on the screen. Technically, the full application is much more complex, but in my experience, any sort of software developer will ask for a minimum reproducible project. So that is what I have done here. It's basically the application stripped out of all the fluff, all the extra stuff, and it's basically just pops up on the screen, and then when you type in keys on the keyboard, it should mimic those keys on the display. So that's what it's supposed to do, and it does not do that. See, I have the application running. It's just that it doesn't take the keyboard inputs. And just as a control test, here is me essentially running this very same application. There we go. And then that's what it's supposed to look like. So this whole thing kind of stems from the fact that I'm running the headless version of Linux, which technically does have a display connected to it, but it doesn't have a display or a desktop environment. Because it doesn't have a desktop environment, it means that it can't run an application in a window, and the window apparently is what actually captures the keyboard event, so I can't get the keyboard events to get forwarded to the game. Now, I really, really, really would like to get the good old standard keyboard events to be, popping up in the application. Before, I think the way I was going around it is I was faking a keyboard with something like this, which basically was, well, basically my own keyboard. It has a little microchip MCP 23017 I2C I2C controller, and what it did is basically connected to a little wire, power, ground, clock signal, and data signal, and that was going into the what used to be a Raspberry Pi, and then in the actual Python application, I would set up the I2C protocol port. I would set up an array of pins for inputs and outputs, and I would loop through those pins, read the states of the pins, and then I would be doing multiplexing because, there's only so many buttons. Well, there's a lot of buttons, but there's only so many pins on the back of the controller. So I had to resort to multiplexing to essentially read the matrix of the buttons and then figure out which button was being pressed. So it worked, but it wasn't a real keyboard. So that meant that you couldn't interact with the operating system using, well, this keyboard. And I really wanted to be able to interact with the actual operating system. So I think that would be nice. It would make it easier to prototype and debug, and if something happens, you can just punch in a little command into the keypad and relaunch the application, and good to go. Now, my so far research has concluded that I need some sort of a Windows system, and everybody that has actually reached out to me to help with this issue has specified that I can just install the X server, which is the window manager for Linux. I don't want to run a desktop environment, but I should according to them, be able to run the X server to essentially launch one particular application. And that's what I've been trying to do. Hey! Look at that. We have keyboard inputs. Beautiful. The only problem is that in order for me to get the keyboard inputs, I had to basically install the desktop environment. Look at how slow this thing is. Oh, God. Like, this is actually atrocious. Let's take a look at how long it takes for us to launch, to boot into this thing. There we go. Oh, don't break it. Start. Alright, let's see. Let's see how long it takes to get into the operating system. There we go. We're gonna assume this point right here is where I would configure automatic login and then automatic launch of the game application. So yeah, a full-on minute and a half. Which, you know what? Fine. It's a minute and a half, sure. But what about the performance implications? Like, it's a desktop environment on a dinky little credit card computer. Like, how much performance am I sacrificing to run literally in the desktop environment that I'm not going to use? Like, I just need a kiosk style application. I literally just need, I have it running. It runs. I'm so goddamn close to getting it up and running. What do I need to do here? Really, just what, launch an environment? What is it? Source. Okay, there we go. And then get in here, if I spell it right. Beautiful. And then Python input test.py using SDL2 library. And there we go. All I need now are some good old basic bitch keyboard events. That's all I'm asking. And in order for me to get that right now, I have to run this entire desktop environment just so I can capture the keyboard inputs. Is there no other way to do it? I mean, the desktop environment adds so much bloat to what is supposed to be a very simple, very lightweight kiosk application. I mean, in comparison, this is how long it takes for the headless version of the Debian to boot up. In, start, let's see this. And there we go. So, 50 seconds. A minute and a half versus 50 seconds. Let's try to do another test. This was the very first time that this was launched. Maybe the initial setup has to, I don't know, define some directories and do some jazz like that. So let's see what happens when we launch it again. Alrighty. Just gonna power that down. Plug that back in. And there we go. Oh, look at that. 46 seconds. About 46, 45. There you go. Just the difference alone in the booting time, and like 46 seconds makes reasonable sense. I'm sure we can tone that down by disabling some services we wouldn't be using. But a minute and a half, that's a bit much for a kiosk application. So this is, I don't know. I tried installing X on the machine, and it complained. That said that it couldn't connect to the frame buffer. I swear, this has been a very consistent theme when it comes to me trying to figure out anything on Linux. I will have a problem like this, and I will post a question on the subreddit. I will ask, hey, I have this problem, how do I fix it? And then the answer would be something like, oh yeah, just install X. Just install the window manager. Just install the desktop environment. All right, okay, well, I can't use the desktop environment, but let's follow along with the other advice. Let's install X. Okay, so we got sudo apt install xorg. Working on it. Okay, there you go. We're going to go ahead and reboot for good measure. Here we go, and then moment of truth. Cannot run frame buffer. Please specify bus IDs. It is never as simple as the top answer. It is never, oh yeah, just install this thing. It's never, oh, you just need that dependency. It's always something else. And every time I try to follow along with the instructions, it requires a rabbit hole of stuff that I need to locate a library. I find it on GitHub. It's not built. I have to build it myself. I try to build it. And when I try to build it, it requires a different library, which also requires building. But then when I try to build it, coincidentally, it has something that it wants from the first library. Fucking Linux, man. On Windows, shit just works, but I can't use Windows here, okay? And I don't want to go back down the rabbit hole of trying to use ESP32 and embedded systems to make this thing. I really want to like Linux. I'm really trying. But it just every step of the way, there's something else that is just broken. It's never, oh, here's a web page that tells me how to install this thing. It didn't work. And something else needs to be done. Seriously. If somebody can help me get keyboard events, I can take it from there, because everything else from there is just nice SDL commands, graphical effects, drawing, all that stuff. I can do that stuff myself. Playback, audio playback. I just need to get these keyboard commands, keyboard inputs to be registered with this application while it is being launched from the command line instead of a desktop environment. How can we do it? It's Linux. It's supposed to be uber flexible. You're supposed to have access. Apparently, every single device is just a text file, from what I've been told. So there shouldn't be such a hurdle to access to a keyboard of all things. A keyboard. Can we not have access to a keyboard from a Python application while it's running? What is it running directly on the frame buffer? There's gotta be a way, like a very simple way to get keyboard events without having to rely on an entire ass window display. Like, I'm okay with not getting the input events through SDL. Okay, forget it. If I can get just keyboard events into the Python application, I don't care if I have to use another library. I don't know what other libraries are out there. Help me. I'm really trying to give Linux an honest, fair chance here. It's fighting me back. It has come down to such a ridiculous point that my last attempt was to literally design a custom keyboard workaround that doesn't even act as a keyboard. It works, but if something happens to the kiosk application, there's no way to interact with the command line through this. So that's why I'd like to keep it as a keyboard human interface device. So folks, please, Linux is supposed to be super universal. It's supposed to be running from rockets to dildos. It runs on everything. It runs on your grandma's pacemaker. There's gotta be a way. Help me figure this out. I need something. In the meantime, I do have the testing application running on Windows, and I can just continue working on getting the basic features set up there, all the menus, switching to the inventory interface, collecting stuff, gathering things, all that good stuff. Yeah, I could just continue working on the desktop version on the Windows, and once I figure out this whole Linux shenanigans, then we'll switch to Linux and see what we can do there.